What did another person do that accidentally turned you on? I had a friend that had brown hair but wanted to dye it to a light blonde. She accidentally messed up the process and dyed it to an almost milky white color. Somehow it looked way better, and since then chicks with white hair have been like a magnet to my eyes. Pretty late to the party, but here's mine. The left side of my back, just under my shoulder blade, keeps tightening up and it's incredibly painful. After about 2 months of just dealing with it, the pain became too great, so I finally swallowed my pride and went to the doctor. As I was sitting at the table being examined, the doctor ran his knuckle down my back a few times, checking different muscles and such, until he ran it down smack dab on the exact spot of my reoccurring back pain. The sudden pain it released, followed by a tidal wave of euphoria immediately afterward, causes me to let out some kind sound that was a mix between a painful grunt and a hypersexual moan. My face immediately goes red and I apologize profusely. My doctor had a good chuckle over it and continued with the examination. I've never been into pain of any kind, but if that doctor had hit that spot one more time, I'd have been gay for a day right then and there. I had a similar problem, a stress-related muscle clinch in the middle of my back. I went to a chiropractor, male, like me, and he called in his masseuse. He said it looked like half a golf ball was under my skin. She was a middle-aged woman, about 5 feet tall and 3 feet wide, and worked on nothing but that spot. I walked out of there feeling like I'd just had the best sex of my life. I was sitting with a friend who was teaching me how to tie a bunch of knots and hitches, figure eights, clove hitches, bowline. Then he puts a handcuff knot on me and yanks me to my feet by my wrists. By the look on his face and how fast another friend whipped his head around to look at us, I must have made a noise. Oops. In college, one of my professors was former federal law enforcement, and he picked me from the class to demonstrate how an interrogation might go. He had me sit in a seat directly across from him and demonstrated how he would slowly move closer and closer to the person being interrogated, up until the point where he had his knee between mine. It's kind of a thing for me now. Couple of construction guys unloaded some things from a delivery truck for us. We had a hand truck there to carry them in, ridiculously heavy boxes. They either didn't see or ignored the hand truck and each threw one up over a shoulder like it weighed nothing, then carried them on a long walk around the building to their destination. I couldn't slide one box off the top of the other due to the weight. My co-worker and I both had immediate reactions to this and still talk about it years later. A girl I was seeing and I were at her pool. Her mom brought us popsicles. We started eating them but they began to melt. I scarfed mine. She didn't. Her popsicle broke off the stick and fell onto her chest. She quickly ran her hand up her chest to get it. Had to hop in the pool to hide my rager. He was writing a fictional story, and I was rather invested in it. Then, he killed off one of the main characters and the story ended in a savagely sad turn of events. It was a great plot twist, and I knew it was coming but it still caught me off guard. I jumped up, playfully yelling and throwing soft punches at his arms. It brought a huge smile to his face, and he caught both my arms and held me there. It was 3 AM. The room was dark. His hands were wrapped tightly around both my tiny wrists. I was in my typical play fight stance, and his bright eyes were locked with mine. He smiled so big. "Are you gonna calm down? I have never wanted to kiss someone so badly in my entire life." I was a drama club kid in high school. We were doing improv practice starting from the scene of one of us threatening the other. I pointed into my partner's face and she grabbed my arm and twisted it over my head, pushing me against the wall duck. When I first met my wife, I was a tourist new to her city. She took charge and showed me all over the city, using need to buy a new purse as an excuse. Most of the summer she took charge on what we were doing. I really appreciated it since I didn't speak the language or know the city. As a guy, I had never been treated like that with dating. Clearly it worked because I put on a ring on that fast. Dated a guy who was fantastic in bed. Before the first time we ducked, I was leaning against his bed and he just stood a few feet away unstrapping his watch while he asked me what my hard limits were, not even making eye contact, and immediately after it was off, he pounced on me. Now I just loved when people take off watches. You know the thing that happens when two people are trying to pass each other in a tight space and you both go the same way a few times in a row and it gets increasingly awkward? A boy I had a crush on ended this by picking me up, turning around and putting me back down gently. I blushed. I wanted him to duck me. It was a confusing mess. When I was in college there was a fellow student who worked on the campus groundskeeping crew. He wasn't traditionally hot, but had a decent dad bod in this charming Georgia accent. Anyway, one day he was building something outside the girls' dorm and it caught my eye. Other girls noticed too, and soon there was a little crowd of girls silently gathered around the window watching him do his thing. At one point he picked up this giant piece of fencing like it weighed nothing and dropped it somewhere else. There was a collective sigh of appreciation from the room, and one girl whispered, "That was so manly." Her voice broke the spell and we all laughed, but I think we were all super turned on. Coworker and I were really good work buddies based in Houston. We were both late 20s at the time. We were sent to another branch for a strategy meeting before they flew us and members of the San Francisco team to England. We flew from Houston to San Francisco, the next day a flight from San Fran to New England, Boston, then on to London. Basically a ton of sitting and being uncomfortable for hours. So she had some sort of arthritis and was having a flare up and was extremely uncomfortable. She said her legs and feet were driving her crazy on the first flight. Much later on the flight to England, she was on the verge of crying. I said, "What if I rub your legs?" She immediately said please. Spent the next few hours watching a movie and rubbing her legs and feet. She was propped up against the window and had her legs in my lap. Raging boner for hours. The flight back she wore shorts and brought lotion out. Asked me to go at it again. Raging boner. When you sit with someone by the table and your leg accidentally touches theirs, I have to admit that turns me on. Especially when I'm wearing dress or shorts at that moment. First date. Crossing a busy street and he puts his hand on my back round my waist to kind of guide me across, pull me closer to him. It's not a new move by any means, but holy it went from he's cute and sweet to sizzling chemistry right then and there. First day of one of my old jobs, I walk into the control room and meet one of my new bosses. She's really hot. Her perfume is exotic. She's 2 years younger than me. She's able to fire me, and I have to spend 8 hours shadowing her. That day was an endurance contest. At one point her hand accidentally brushed my pants west of the groin area over the pocket. Almost death starred my undergarments right there. When a female friend pulled up her shirt to show me her tummy and ask me something about it. Baggy t-shirt, baggy sports pants, tight stomach, the absolute dream. I have a stomach fetish. A friend of mine invited me and another friend out for milkshakes, and at one point she got some of hers on her fingertip, so she licked it off. I felt very flustered about this, so I turned to my other friend who was also licking milkshake off her fingertips. Anyway, it turns out I'm a lesbian. My current SO and I met through work. We had a trainer-trainee relationship. I like being dominated, so already his authority turned me on. He trained me for a few weeks and was pretty serious and professional, up until the end. At the end of our shift, I was being stupid and flirtatious and he threatened to slap me. I was like, "Do it," and tapped my cheek. Much to my delight he did it, lightly, but firmly too. And then when he saw my look of shock, let out the heartiest laugh I'd ever heard from him. I was immediately wet. I could feel my face burning. I had to make up an excuse to step away. Good God. I did find out later he was as hard as a rock during that incident too. Haha, what a keeper. She was playing footsie with me in Spanish class, sitting across from each other, and eventually just set her foot down on my seat between my legs and then she accidentally kicked my dong hard. It wasn't painful at all, but holy shit, I was hard for hours. I don't know why. One time in dance class in college we were doing partner stretches and this really attractive, but very gay, classmate of mine was my partner. I was in a straddle and he was pushing, laying on my back so that it was flat against the ground. It hurt so good that I had an orgasm. Yep. Wasn't an accident on their part, but usually I don't get turned on easily. I used to have a coworker at a job and she was stupidly flirtatious. Had a phenomenal butt too. Used to just do cheeky things at work, but one day I leant over behind her to use the tap past her shoulder and she licked down the side of my face. 10 seconds later I feel Fonzie Jr. on the rise, so had to go to the bathroom and sit down for a few minutes to prevent the worst. She was proud of that. Miss working with her. One time my husband backed our truck into a really small space downtown in one quick sweep. I don't know if it was his impressive precise parking skills or the notion of fitting something so big into such a tight space so smoothly that turned me on. Bit weird lame, but in high school I used to shake my leg up and down a lot for some reason. But I was sitting next to this girl I liked and her leg was basically touching my leg because small desk, so while my leg was shaking it was basically shaking hers, and I guess she liked it because she gave a quiet moan and put her hand on my arm. Teenage me popped quite the chub.